this is where the story really is lacking, is talking about them and hearing what, they went through. You people are like getting the Epstein file dump and they're like going to the website and they're just like typing in like celebrities' names, and like big people's names and seeing like who came up, who was associated, and then they're moving on when it's like, well, actually there's so much more to it. Yes, are these celebrities probably doing bad things? Like, yeah, they're right. It's right here in black and white. But you were saying that there was potentially an incinerator on this property. Is that
Yeah.
something that you read in the files?
Yeah, that comes from one of the tip sheets that was found in the files recently. And I believe the guy who submitted the tip was either an ex or an active law enforcement officer from the area. I believe he's an ex law enforcement guy. But he claimed to have seen this incinerator sort of structure that was on the property. And he thought that it was so suspicious that he called this thing in and tried to report it and say, it seems like they're burning something and they're kind of trying to hide this thing. At least that's what it looked like to him. And yeah, as with all of the tips that went into the FBI or the different agencies, for years, it almost seems like they received this tip and then just threw it in the trash or put it in the recycling through the paper shredder because yeah, it was never investigated. And so we don't know. Was there a massive incinerator there on the property? There is a story actually of this is a side note, but there was a alleged cartel extermination camp that was discovered in Mexico last year. And at that
What is
extermination,
that even?
yeah, it's a crazy story. I mean, there's also an element of cover up in that story. It was basically there was a group of people whose loved ones had disappeared in Mexico, and they were searching for their loved ones, or morbidly,
Mhm,
the remains of their loved ones. And they
mhm,
came across this facility. They had received a tip, and when they entered, there were these incinerators buried in the ground, and tons of clothing, items that they recognized that had belonged to their loved ones, and they filmed all of this and put it out online and got an investigation started into this cartel kind of death house.
mhm.
And when they were brought back in for kind of a PR press event with local news and authorities, a lot of the stuff that they had discovered had been cleaned out and they were trying to act like it never existed. It never existed. And yet they have the photos and the videos and the proof of their own to show that they believe that this is what was happening there. So that is something that these criminal organizations do. And I've always been one to say, when it comes to Epstein and these individuals, yes, they made really stupid decisions. We can't give them too much credit and act like they're infallible, like evil geniuses, but
Mhm.
they were smart enough to not get caught for however long. And I mean, I know they had the government helping them, at least some people believe. Um, but I don't think they would just necessarily bury a body out there in a shallow grave. I mean, maybe, but if they were getting rid of something on the ranch, I would imagine that they would definitely incinerate it. So seeing that on the tip sheet in the files was really shocking to me. And I really haven't seen anybody talking about
Yeah.
that file, let alone some of the other files that I talked about in the video.
So, are you saying that you're surprised or you're not surprised that this property hasn't been very thoroughly searched and have public records of everything that was found there for us to scrutinize over?
That's the weirdest thing about Zorro Ranch. Why did they never search the property? Because
Correct.
to me and everybody who looks at this, that makes the authorities look guilty as hell. I mean, it's like
Yeah.
having an active crime scene that you never step foot in. It's so crazy that it sounds like a detail that people have invented to make the story sound more ludicrous. But it doesn't surprise me. I mean, we're talking about Epstein and the Epstein network, which is a conglomeration of industry figures, Hollywood types, government figures. So of course there's going to be an element of hush hush and cover up, but to be as brazen as to not search a property where dozens of victims have claimed that they were taken to and assaulted, let alone there were these allegations that we know that they already had or would receive in the near future about bodies being buried in the area.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it's there's just no explanation. I mean, it's like Occam's razor. Sometimes the the simplest explanation is the explanation, which would be there was some sort of collusion. to make sure that that property wasn't searched until a proper cleanup could be done.
Well, yeah, and then you say that and people are like, "Oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. Oh,
Yeah.
you're crazy." But it's like, well, what but what's the other option, like, if they're not covering it up? Something that you did in your video, which added a lot of context as well before you went out to the ranch, was you stopped at a site nearby that was the very first Microsoft
Yeah.
office?
Yeah, that was in Albuquerque. So we were staying in Albuquerque and, you know, I use websites sometimes that tell me, weird little spots that you can go visit. I think it's Atlas Obscura is the website I used,
Nice.
and I was just shocked to find out that Microsoft had really started in Albuquerque. Like, I
Mhm.
had no idea. And obviously, when you know the Epstein story and you know how closely tied in Bill Gates was to Jeffrey Epstein, it just becomes one of those curious details. There's this kind of shadowy nexus of power in New Mexico that we could talk about all day. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think Bill Gates is also one of the figures that was really more tied into Epstein, obviously, than he would care to admit. And he's felt the ramifications of that relationship in his own life.
Do you
But
think?
I mean, the divorce and, his PR has taken a massive hit. But yeah, obviously, we've had no arrests. So
I mean, I think it could be worse.
yeah, I hope that it gets worse, at some point. I mean, I believe that when the kind of current guard is changed out in the White House and in the halls of power here, hopefully somebody will come in that will actually want to do something. And I know that there are a lot of representatives or, elected officials that do want to see something done, but they're being stonewalled by the people that, you know, for
Or
some
in the
reason or
files?
another. Yeah, they don't want this thing investigated really. I wonder why.